Welcome to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. And now, here's your host, Wade T. Lightheart.
What is Awesome Health? It's actually an acronym that stands for air, water, exercise, sunshine, optimizers, mental beliefs and attitudes, and education. These are the pillars of peak health, and my team and I have created a free 12-week course that you can use to transform. Each day, you'll get a written and video lesson delivered to your inbox. Everything is covered from the foundations of digestion to advanced alternative therapies few people know about. And again, it's 100% free. Just go to bioptimizers.com. That's bioptimizers.com.
Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, wherever you are. It's Wade T. Lightheart from the Awesome Health Podcast from Bioptimizers, and I'm joined here tonight with a good friend, Bob Wright. He is the author of Killing Cancer, Not People. That's in its 4th edition. It's an amazing book that people need. Cancer touched all of our lives. He is the founder of the American Anti-Cancer-Institute and the International Wellness and Research Center. This message started in America, but now it's gone worldwide since this started a few years ago. Bob is going to break down a lot of things that people know. We've all been touched by cancer. I've been touched by cancer. As many of you know, my sister died of cancer and had a big impact when I was a young man. Bob has his own story, which we'll get into, and virtually everybody is connected with the cancer story. What a lot of people don't know is that we're presented with information that is somewhat limited, that kind of focuses on one variance of what you can do if someone is diagnosed or treatment options. And Bob is spreading a message about the other options that are available people, either as completely alternative or as a supportive nature. I want to welcome you to the show, Bob Wright. How are you today?
Well, Wade, I am just blessed. I'm delighted to see you again and be with you so we can sit down and talk a little bit and catch up. But I'm doing extremely well, probably too well right now. Thank you.
Well, you look fantastic. But for those who don't know or haven't heard about the American Anti-Cancer Institute or this book that you've done that's been so transformative for so many people, Killing Cancer, Not People, how did this all come about? How did you get started? Why so much passion and literally the effort that you've put into this project? You made it your life's mission. How did that all happen?
Well, it's actually a long story, so I'll try and condense it now. It started in college when I was an athlete. I was blessed to go through college on what we called then full ride scholarships, because I came from a poor family. I probably never would have gone to college had I not had a way to get there. So I was always interested in athletics and becoming a better athlete and doing it legally. You know, a lot of people don't ascribe to that today with all the blood doping and everything else going on. So I did that in basketball and baseball, and eventually later on in life, probably my mid-30s, began distance running and ran a couple marathons and many other long runs. And as you know, you being an athlete and training very hard for what you have done, you know that it takes a lot of dedication to do that. And obviously it takes the right nutrition. And so I sought after that, studying supplements and most of them weren't any good back in the mid 80s, but I studied them and finally found one that worked. And it just kind of spurred me on to discover more about the human body. And of course, college, I did all of the ologies, like I said, anatomy, physiology, and that became more, especially the physiology part, became more important to me as I got into this, what we call this cancer thing or this anti-cancer thing. But what really pushed me over the edge, of course, was probably 20 years or so ago when my mom died of cancer, and she went within a week after diagnosis, which was really fast. My dad died about 6 or 7 years after that of kidney cancer, and he went over 16 years. So I saw both ends of the spectrum, and I saw the the care that is given to these patients, or lack of care, however you want to term it. And I really wanted to find out what this cancer racket was all about. And that's what really started me into this quest, not just in cancer, but in all diseases, especially chronic illness, which just plagues both of our countries and all countries around the world today. So I studied that, and like most people who study cancer and chronic illness, I didn't find what I expected to find. I found a completely different story than what I was being told, what the general public was being told. And so I had a quest at that point to really out the cancer industry and medicine, at the same time giving them kudos for the good they do to our societies. We have to do that because we need good medicine when we need that kind of medicine. And so that's what really got me going. And, it's resulted in being a decades-long quest for information, for knowledge and understanding, for the real truth regarding our wellness, regarding prevention, which is the real cure, and what works and what doesn't work for us when we're not well. And so I've been able to acquire, quite a lot of information, documentation, done a lot of research, mainly just seeking the truth. And that's what we do here at the American Anti-Cancer Institute, is we want to know the truth. No matter what it is, we want to know what the truth is so that we can share it. When people know more about their health, about healing, about prevention, they have more options and they can make wiser choices, we believe.
You bring up a really good topic, and I think it's something when I can remember when my sister got diagnosed, my grandfather died of cancer, and a bunch of relatives died of cancer. And then my sister got diagnosed, and being a young age, the trauma of a diagnosis, and people start using these big, long Latin words, and they start talking percentages, and they start, they kind of assume the sale right off the bat if you were looking from a marketing standpoint when you're in that medical situation. And anytime you're in that situation, you don't have information, you don't have expertise, you don't whatever, you're at a very big disadvantage as an individual who are looking at their options with that. What would you say? And I personally, my personal opinion is that a lot of the doctors are actually bound within a very tight, I would say, scientific, legal, and lobbyist system that really prevents them from leveraging their intelligence, their capabilities, or what they can say or what they can disseminate to you in those situations. So we have to also not just throw doctors under the bus. It's that they're caught within a grindstone themselves, not just the patient. But I think when a person gets that situation, looking at what are my alternative, I think that it's so crazy to me that people get a diagnosis and they just accept the one diagnosis from the one doctor and go down that without really taking a look. And I think one of the things that you do is provide a much broader spectrum of what the problem is and what an even greater spectrum of the options. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think it's really dovetail into your Killing Cancer, Not People book. What happens when someone gets a diagnosis or gets in a situation where they might have cancer, or should they start reading this before they even go there? What would you say?
Oh yeah, before. Start today, actually, because it's about wellness too. It's not just about sickness. And sadly, when people do get that diagnosis, whatever it is, but cancer is the very frightful one to people today, they have a tendency to go into a panic. But where they go is to that doctor. When I grew up, God was at the highest level, and slightly under God was the family doctor. And you did what the doctor said. And that has basically been carried down through the decades and decades. We go to the doctor. Now, if you get a diagnosis of cancer with your oncologist, and he tells you, for instance, well, you've got 90 days to live, there's nothing we can do for you. What patients do is they accept that, and they proceed to follow their doctor's orders, and they go home and die. Most of them, not all of them. Some of them want to fight like the devil to try and beat this, and those are the survivors. And I don't blame them, because they have gone to this this person who they believe has the ultimate knowledge and understanding about sickness and disease. And no matter how much time they're given, or if they're told you have to do chemo, you have to do radiation, you have to do surgery, and you have to do them right now, we are trained through dogma. This is the way it's always been. This must be right. This is the way we need to do it. That we're going to follow that. And we have very little knowledge of understanding of anything that lies outside of what you talked about, that standard of care that doctors are locked into. They've got very few tools. That's what people don't understand. The doctor goes to work and he opens up his toolbox, and what does he find for a cancer patient? He finds surgery, chemo, other drugs, and radiation. That's all he's got. Mm-hmm. And so when you go there, that's all you're going to get. And you're not going to be told. Can you imagine a doctor saying, gee, don't listen to this stuff. Go get some good turmeric, get some broccoli, get some good supplements. They're far better chemo than anything I can give you. If a doctor ever said that, of course, he'd be fired, because then now he has walked outside of that standard of care, which he is locked into, and he has professed that he is going to be a part of that. The Hippocratic Oath really doesn't come into play there. First, do no harm. It doesn't come into play, because if I were a doctor and I wanted to first do no harm, I certainly wouldn't entertain any of those options, understanding that surgery is sometimes absolutely necessary. I can't think of a case when chemo or radiation are absolutely necessary. I'd follow it if I knew it would help, but we know that there are natural things that help far better than that. So what I would tell people to do first is don't panic. Don't panic. Go looking. Find out what your options really and truly are. Go to this far side that people call alternative medicine. Although we're really not alternative. We're natural medicine. And we are the real medicine of the ages, of the last millennia. People always used plants. They used good water. They used the things of the earth that God gave us to keep us well and to heal us. There's nothing alternative about that. What's alternative is putting chemicals and radiation into a body that is now sick and diseased because of chemicals and radiation. And so we've got to be smarter than this. I'm not blaming people. I'm not calling them dumb or stupid. I'm just saying, let's do what we would do for our children to begin with. If our children got sick, we would turn over every rock and spade every foot of earth to try and find what would help our children. Let's do that for ourselves too.
I think that's a really couple salient points there. Number one, don't accept that. There was a great book back in the day, Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, and he talked about how people who were practicing voodoo would literally drop dead on a situation if the voodoo doctor said, hey, you own the bone. And that's the power of belief. And so I think in today's day and age, with the rapid growth of technology and information and expansion of alternative sources and alternative, shall I say, channels of information, like what we're doing right here with the podcast and YouTube, and the ability to access really incredible people such as yourself and organizations that you run, and the people that support it, where you've brought this message out of, hey, there are some other options that you get that situation. I think you said another thing that's really important. Don't panic. Mm-hmm. Recognize this is an opinion from a person with a limited toolbox, and that you need to go out there and do a comparison analysis. Just like if you were shopping for a house, you wouldn't just get the one house, or shopping for a car. Like, you got to do an analysis. It's not necessarily a death sentence, and especially if they give you that hardcore sentence, that oftentimes, which I think is I don't even know if that's, I mean, I just have a whole piece on that. It's like someone says, well, you got 90 days to die, to live. It's like, well, first, before you tell me that question, I always say, ask a question back. Well, how many days do you have to live, Mr. Doctor? Mm-hmm. And they can't tell you that answer. So how could you tell me what it was? That's, based on, a projection or their inference, but they're not gods. So let's talk about your book and I think everybody needs to own a copy of this book right away. I'm excited to get the new edition, actually. I haven't seen the new edition yet, so I want to get one of those. What is inside of this book? There it is. Show us Killing Cancer, Not People by Robert G. Wright. I like to call you Bob. Most people call you Bob. Yeah. What's inside this book, and why is it so important for actually, I think everybody should have one of these in their home, because
sooner or later, someone they know or it's close to them is going to get one of these diagnoses.
That's a very important point, because you and I discussed earlier that the book, even though it's entitled Killing Cancer, Not People, and it is about cancer and it's about anti-cancer, basically, and what I would do if I was diagnosed with cancer. But it's so straightforward that it really goes across the board to all chronic illness. I mean, if you're someone who has type 2 diabetes, if you've got neurodegenerative disease, if you've got autoimmune disease, if you've got almost any chronic illness or things we would classify as chronic illness, mattering not what it is, generally these protocols that are outlined in this book is what I would do with any of those things. So when we go through a 5-step protocol, people will comment on their cancers, their specific cancers. And when I'm consulting with someone, and like you said, those 26-letter words, people will claim those. They'll take ownership of them and say, I've got this different kind of cancer. It's a rare kind of cancer, so I need to be treated differently. I need something differently. And I'll look at them and I'll say, well, actually, no, you don't. And they're kind of shocked. Because it gets back to understanding how your body works. Mm-hmm. Now, if doctors understood that a little better, if they understood the genetic portion and the epigenetic portion, they could help their patients far better. Sadly, most doctors today still believe that cancer is genetic. And while there maybe are a few percentage of cases that are genetically driven, that's largely a false statement. And so we go over that in the book, and we discuss what cancer really is. When you discover what cancer really is, or these other chronic illnesses, then you can walk it backwards. And you say, why do I have this? And, a doctor, in many cases, cannot tell you why. They'll just, especially when you have cancer, they say, well, you've got some cells that are multiplying out of control. You've got this, your genetics have gone haywire. And he'll talk for a few minutes, and then he or she throw his arms or her arms up in the air and say, well, we really don't know. I don't want to go to that doctor. I want to go to someone who knows what they're doing. And we discover that by finding out how magnificent this body of ours is and how it works. When we discover how it works, we know what it takes to heal our bodies at the same time. And so that's when we talk about walking it backwards, that's what we do. Why do you have this? Well, I can tell you why you have cancer. Your body is acidic. Acidity brings inflammation. Inflammation brings pain. Pain brings sickness and ultimately chronic illness and ultimately death. And so we understand that process. And so we can utilize the things necessary then at that point to take this thing the other direction. And that's what we do. And so I would, tell people in this book are the tenets of health and healing, period. Whether you have cancer or something else, this is a book that you need to have in your home. And it's written more like a novel, so people will actually read it. Both you and I, Wade, have read books that are 3 inches thick and that have a lot of research in them. And, people with cancer would read those and say, well, what does it mean? What do I do now? And they simply don't know. This is a how-to book. Many people call it their cancer Bible. It's something that they can actually utilize. I've been back to cities where I've done events before, and people will come up to me. They own the second edition or something like that, and they'll say, I highlighted in yellow the important parts of the book. And they'll open their book, and the whole book is yellow. And that's because they found little tidbits of information that helped them along the way, that they knew they could utilize to help themselves. And we see that all the time. It's typical now because it's a usable resource. And if you have cancer or anything else, that's what you want, is a usable resource that can actually help you in real time.
I can relate to that because I can remember as a young man when I was 15 years old, and we would be driving my sister back from a chemotherapy treatment or radiation treatment, and we'd have to stop. It was about 55 miles to the hospital, And we'd have to stop maybe sometimes half a dozen times on the worst days, and maybe 2 or 3 times where she'd be vomiting. And it was a horrific experience. And I can remember in kind of the purity of a young person and their thinking. And I remember thinking to myself at that time, well, if this program is supposed to make her better, why does she keep getting sick from the treatment? That was the question that dogged me for decades. And there was just something pure in my thinking. This doesn't seem to make sense. If you want to have health, you should be doing things that lead to health. If you want to, it's like if you study sickness, what are you going to find out? You're going to find all the things that cause sickness. If you study health, you're going to find all the things that cause health. And I think the splitting of that consciousness, and I chose from those unique circumstances, the value that I got out of it is I didn't want to go down that pathway. So I started looking at all the things that developed and created health. And of course, that's what your book does. Your book gets into these things that allows the body to literally leverage its amazing capacity to heal itself, or to facilitate, or what nutrients or what agents or what technologies can be used to help facilitate and support the natural processes inside the body. A couple things you mentioned was genetics and epigenetics, and I don't want to get super scientific here for our listeners, but let's talk. I think epigenetics might be the biggest breakthrough. The acceptance of epigenetics probably be the biggest breakthrough this decade. And that is that your genetics, which was always like, oh, well, our family genetically has cancer, our family is genetically fat, or all these kind of stories. But what it really means is that there's a lot more flexibility inside how we express our genes. So let's talk about epigenetics and what you have discovered and what you're kind of illustrating in this book, at least a little bit, so to get people why they need to get this book.
And I try and simplify it, especially in the book, because you're right. We can wade deep into the weeds here. And again, we go back to now, no one's really going to understand this. It needs to be workable. So let's say that the genetics of your body, they're carved in stone. That's the computer of your body. And but your computer is driven by the software. And so the genetics is the computer, the software is the epigenetics. And we know without good software, your computer is not going to work very well. So we can further break that down into genetics equals computer equals anatomy, basically. And then we can break down epigenetics as being the software, but also being the physiology of your body. And I took anatomy and physiology in college, and many people have, and they understand it as well. Anatomy, that's what you are. That's your organs, that's your skin, your eyes, everything that is your makeup. And that's driven by how you were, what your genetics were at birth, of course. Do you have blue eyes? It's because of your genes. It's because of your DNA. And but the epigenetics is a little more complex, quite a bit more when you think about it, because it involves all of the systems and all the biochemical reactions within your body, all the individual pathways, whether it be for enzymes or hormones or detoxification pathways, everything, these millions and billions of activities and reactions that take place daily within your body, the building of new cells, all of these things are your epigenetics driving the body. Now, when your genetics are pretty much carved in stone, if you can have some bad genetic traits, like if you're born with, say, trisomy 21, which is Down syndrome, that's how you're born. That's what you are. It's basically unchangeable. So those genetic things are unchangeable. What is changeable is the epigenetics. When they start to break down is when we start to see this chronic illness. And again, we say it's driven by acidity. We're born alkaline. Anyone who smelled a newborn baby know it smells good because it's alkaline. Anyone who's walked into a rest home or an old folks home, they know it smells bad because it's acid. So we spend our whole life making an alkaline body acidic, and that drives, again, the inflammation, which drives the pain and the disease. And so your systems are breaking down, your epigenetic systems are breaking down, again, relating to all of these functions within the body. So doesn't it make perfect sense then, instead of looking for how we can change our genetics, which we can't, how we can restore these epigenetic systems? Now, it does involve genetics after a fashion, in that we need to upregulate and downregulate genes. We do that through epigenetics and these epigenetic pathways, but they will, to an extent, affect the genes a little bit. People can have a defective gene, but that defective gene has to be expressed, upregulated or downregulated, before it affects us. Now, we all know that Angelina Jolie had a bilateral mastectomy and her ovaries are removed because she carried a defective gene, what they call a BRCA1 gene that was said to be defective. Now, based on that, she had this done, not having any breast cancer, because the BRCA1 can drive a breast cancer over time if that gene is no longer suppressed, if it's expressed, or ovarian cancer or something like that. Men have the same gene that can drive prostate cancer. And men, while we're talking about it, if you live to be 100, you're going to get prostate cancer. But in most cases, it won't kill you. You have more of a chance of being struck by lightning than dying of prostate cancer. Keep that in mind. It's in the book.
That's a powerful statement right there.
It is.
To people to take out, and why you want to dive in and read that particular item, because it's such a, for men in particular, I think it's real easy to kind of put that onto the back burner and not do the proper prevention methodologies around, maintaining and protecting our prostates.
It's actually that and more than that, because men with a prostate, they have a PSA score, that the doctor says, well, it's 12 and it should be, less than 1. And so we're going to have to yank that prostate out. That's the best thing for you. Don't fall for that. My gosh, don't fall for that. The guy who invented for the PSA test, Dr. Thomas Stamey from Stanford, says he wished he never would have done it, because he has removed more prostates that he wished he never would have, because it wasn't necessary. He says that BPH, which is the benign prostatic hyperplasia, the swelling of the prostate, now is more responsible for the higher PSA scores than actual cancer itself. So we need to be very careful with that. It's not to say that if you have a very aggressive case, you might have to have some very aggressive things to do. We don't want to give men false hopes either, but we want them to tell them to look into it. But again, all of these things are epigenetically driven. So we know how now to affect our epigenetic systems. While we can't affect the genetics, we can affect the epigenetics, which in turn can affect these our DNA, these single nucleotides, these SNPs on our DNA. We can look at them now through just taking swabs in the mouth, and we can tell you exactly what is upregulated and what is downregulated, and how you can go about specific nutrition to reverse that and upregulate what needs to be upregulated and downregulate, and so on and so forth. So this is a science that's been around for a while, but it's just coming into its own, with the 23andMe thing, and people are trying to find out where they came from, what their lineage is, and they can do that through DNA now, which is all well and good. People want to do that. That's fantastic. But what's more important is we can actually look at our genes now, and we need to do that, especially when we've got sickness or disease, to find out how we might better utilize the natural things out there, because they are the most effective by far. There's no drug out there that can match anything that is natural if it's used properly and correctly. I like to say that the best chemotherapy that you can take is the food you put in your mouth every day, and that's a fact.
The Bioptimizer mission is to help more of the world fix their digestion at a core level. The truth is, your digestion is only as good as your enzyme levels. Imagine trying to build a house with a tree. It's impossible. You need to chop the tree down into small pieces. Similarly, in order for your food to be used by your body, it must be broken down into a bioavailable form. And that's what enzymes do, converting protein into amino acids, fats into specific fatty acids, and carbohydrates into usable energy units. We start out with an abundance of enzymes, and that's why kids can digest just about anything really quickly. The thing is cooking food kills enzymes as they cannot survive at temperatures above 118 degrees. So years of this ends up depleting our bodies and leads to weak digestion. Taking digestive enzymes like masszymes, which has an incredibly high level of protease for digesting protein, as well as other critical enzymes like lipase, amylase, and others, is a total game changer. Suddenly, you strengthen your digestion, eliminate gas and bloating, boost metabolism, and multiply your energy. Most importantly, you fix your digestion at a core level. To get started with Masszymes and to save 10% on your first order, go to masszymes.com. That's MASSZYMES.com and use the code MASS10, MASS10.
It's a big aspect of, I think, this whole health and illness, and that is, it comes down to responsibility. And, there's so much talk today about rights, and there's so much talks about, victims and perpetrators. It's kind of a theme that's going in almost everything. But at the end of the day, I do believe that the health and disease comes down to personal accountability. And it's like, you are accountable for what you eat. You are accountable for your lifestyle. You are accountable to the people that you choose to listen to. And there is a cost to whatever identity you develop. And there's a benefit to every identity. And so the question leads me always to, and I always turn this back to our listeners, is like, hey, take responsibility for your life. Take responsibility for your decisions. That doctor or that person, they have 15 minutes with you or an hour with you. You spend all your time with you, and what you do in that time is going to determine your health and vitality. Let's talk about, I'm going to talk about two more things, and then I would like to go to your 5-step program to finish up. What is the role of the American Anti-Cancer Institute, your messaging, what you're doing, and what the process is, and why people should get excited about it, or how they can feel to contribute to this message?
Well, as I told you a little earlier, we are also doing business as the International Wellness and Research Center, and ultimately that will probably be the name that people see with us, although we'll always be the American Anti-Cancer Institute, because we're a 501c3 nonprofit in the United States. People make donations to us, they're tax deductible. And we're a nonprofit for a reason. We want to reinvest everything that comes into us. And most of our income comes through the book, because even though I wrote the book and I'm the publisher, I gave it to the AACI so it could be a fundraiser for us. So all the net proceeds don't go to me, they go to the AACI. And we have used that through the sale of hundreds of thousands of these books with no marketing whatsoever, other than the events that I do around the world and on our website, basically. Then we've done very well with it. We're going to start marketing it this year, so we know we'll do much better. But the idea is to educate people. When you have an education, why do we go to college? Why do we go to school? We do it to get an education and to specialize somewhere in what we really want to do or would like to do. Well, we specialize in educating the public about what are mislabeled alternative therapies, which are really natural therapies. Again, giving them an education about conventional medicine and natural medicine, what works, what doesn't work, what the studies show, what the truth is. We try and really tell people what the real situation is in this world, in our country and in Canada and around the world regarding cancer, but also regarding all sickness and disease and prevention. We can't say the C word, the cure word,
correct,
or anything that we put out to people, and we don't. We don't tell people that, even though we forward Kangen water as the number one thing we recommend for all cancer patients, we can't tell them that it cures cancer or anything else. No one can logically do that, because it's a combination of things, which we'll get into in the 5-step program, that does that. But there are many doctors and many organizations who are saying that they're curing cancer now. They can use the word. we can't. And they're using it irresponsibly because they're really not doing it. And the public does not understand that. And so we tell the public the true statistics. 97.1% of people in the United States who undergo chemotherapy are dead 5 years from the start of those treatments. People don't know that. They think that 50, 60, 70% of people are being healed with chemotherapy. It's simply not true, and we can prove it. Have them prove to you that it is true, and they can't do it. They will cite all these skin cancer cases, which makes up the most of cancer cases, and their basal cell carcinomas, which are all these patients last longer than 5 years because the doctors keep cutting them out and cutting them out, and they come back and they cut them out and they cut them out. And so the patients live longer than 5 years. And the mantra is in conventional medicine, if you live 5 years after diagnosis or after treatment begins, you're healed. So if you die on the first day after the 5 years, you're both healed and dead. Makes no sense. Makes no sense at all. We want people to be healed for good. We want people to be in permanent remission, whatever remission means to them. We just don't want people to have cancer any longer. And we have the methodologies to do that, and modern medicine does not, sadly. So we educate the public. And education is everything. It's everything when you have cancer, because as we said earlier, you'll make smarter decisions and make wiser choices when you have options. Today, you don't have options. If you're in America today, you go to an oncologist, you get the big three, and you know that. And one thing that's vitally important, if you're a parent in the United States, I'm not sure if this is the same in Canada, but I think it is. If your child goes to an oncologist and is officially diagnosed with cancer, you must, by law, submit that child to chemo and radiation and surgery as necessary. If you do not, they will come and get your child and do it anyway. And if you resist, you'll go to jail. So you don't own your children. And we've worked with several parents. What do you do? Well, we've made some good recommendations of what we would do. I can't tell people to flee the country. Many have, and their children are flourishing today. Many have gone to different locations. The children are flourishing. Those children who were going to die without that type of intervention. And so we're educating, Wade, and I must confess, we're doing a pretty darn good job at it. And we probably, because we're in the trenches with the cancer patients themselves, we're counseling them every day. We're counseling them through this book right here every single day. We're going around the world. I'm going to Australia and New Zealand in September. I was in Southeast Asia in many different countries, including mainland China last year. We're going to Europe. I was just in Toronto and Ottawa and Montreal, Canada. And so we're in the trenches. We're doing the things that really make a difference to people with cancer and with all chronic illness. And we're just delighted with the results, because we see most of them come to healing who do the right things and are willing to be dedicated, like you said, take the responsibility for your own body. That doctor has no stake in your life and whether you live or die. You've got to have a stake in it, and it's your responsibility.
Well said. Let's talk about your 5-step program. And I think it's really important to talk about this before you get into it. And that is the best way to deal with cancer is to start doing the things that will allow you to be healthy right off the bat. Like I read somewhere years ago in biology that eventually all organisms will develop cancer. And I thought that's interesting. That's an interesting statement in its own. But what are the things that you can do on a daily basis for someone listening to that? If you're sitting there and going, you know what, I'm going to take ownership today. I know that maybe this has happened in my family. This has happened in my friends. I'm a little worried about it. It's time to take action today. What are the things a person needs to do starting today in your 5-step program?
Well, they need to do 5 things and variations off these 5 things. And these variations, let me just say what they are first, and then we'll go into them individually. and do it rather rapidly. But the first thing is you have to eat right. No one can dispute that. And we know many people with cancer who have just changed their diet and they've come to healing. Now, of course, we know that the only thing that heals the human body is the immune system. That's why we never say it's one thing. It's not this water. It's not this food. It's not this supplement. But it's a combination of things that really work to heal the body. But food is really the most important thing. You can do almost everything else right. And if you're not eating right, if you're not going to let go of those Hostess cupcakes or that sugared soda pop and sugar, then you're not going to do well. And we must confess that. So eating right is fundamental. Now, if we really thought about it, we would eat organic, every chance we have, because that's where the nutrients are. I understand some people can't always do that because they say it's more expensive, but those costs have come down dramatically because more and more people are doing it. So we need to think about that. The second thing would be you need to drink the right fluids. And in this case, I talk about Kangen water. The third thing, and I'll elaborate on that too, the third thing is we need to take the right supplementation, especially when we have illness, because our body's not getting the amount of nutrients. We may be so sick with cancer that we can't eat much. So we need to figure out what the right nutrients are, and we need that additional supplementation. We need to detox our body. That's number 4. Many people get better and better on these protocols, but they fail to detox. And if you don't get those toxic substances out of your body, you're not going to get all the way there, because they're going to prohibit you from reaching full healing. And the 5th thing is exercise for those who can. And of course, exercise does many things for the body. We shouldn't have to explain it here. It gets the oxygen into the cells. It gets your blood moving. It gets the junk out of your cells. But it also moves your lymph system. And your lymph system is one of your main detox symptoms. And it's so clogged up and full of crap so much with people that don't exercise at all and people that eat poorly that we really need to exercise. Of course, if you're a cancer patient that is on your back with stage 4 cancer, you're not going to exercise. But it's for people who have the ability still to get their body moving. So these are the 5 things. And there are some things that fall off of these as well, or come into play here. But back to number 1, the right food. I outlined this in the book. It should be pretty self-explanatory for most people now. We know that we go into a grocery store, we almost can't buy anything anymore because the packaged foods are full of dyes, they're full of colorings, they're full of chemicals and preservatives. They're just not really any good for us anymore. And it's a shame that we even call them food in some instances. But we need the right diet. And the right diet consists of things that live, so that we can live. I like to say that if you can't throw your food in the dirt and watch it grow, don't eat it. And that's just a way of saying we need live food because it contains the most nutrients, those phytonutrients. We need to get protomorphogens into the body as well. And those are those tissue extracts that our body produces until we get older. And then we need to find them elsewhere so we can repair our organs and we can rebuild our cells. And so we really need foods that are living, that will help us live and that will drive the healing of those epigenetic systems in the body. We need the right water. I talk about Kangen water a lot, so much that people think I'm a Kangen water distributor or Enagic pays me a whole lot of money to do this. They pay me nothing, nor would I ever take anything. I'm not a Kangen water distributor. I don't sell these ionizing machines. But I recommend them highly because it's the right thing to do. I've checked out the science for years and years, 10 years now running on why these machines, why ionized water, why Kangen water does what it does in the human body. And it's steeped in science, and that's why I recommend it. It's steeped in oxidation reduction potential, those antioxidants, that molecular hydrogen and oxygen, which is essential for the cell. It actually safeguards and destroys the rouleau in your body, in your body, where your red blood cells and your cells stick together, which is so important. That negative charge is so important for the body, and it separates the cells so they don't glom together, so they can actually carry oxygen again to your cells, so they can carry the molecular hydrogen to the cells. These are the healing antioxidants that help to raise that negative cell voltage. Your cells need to run between minus 25 and minus 50 millivolts. If they don't, you're sick. And most people, they don't. And so the fastest way to get that negative cell voltage back up to where it needs to be so your cells can heal, so your body can produce new cells, is by drinking Kangen water, period. No one can dispute that when they know the science. Because when you're driving minus 400 to minus 800 oxidation reduction potential into your body, you're raising that cell voltage. Nothing is faster. Nothing is better, period. So we need Kangen water for the alkalinity as well. We need to, remember, change that acidic body back to alkaline. This is the fastest way in the world to do that and to hydrate the human body. Next, we need to get the right supplementation. We use the Relive products because they're synergistic within the body, but they're bioavailable, which is important, especially if you're a cancer patient. You can't eat a steak. I mean, a steak's probably not going to digest in your body. Yeah, it's a good source of protein, but it's not going to digest in your body. It will if we use, Wade, your enzymes, but people aren't even using enzymes today. They're not using probiotics. We need to use, both of those. But we need that supplemental nutrition that will drive it. And we use the Relive products. And now we're onto some new products, and get a hold of us about Euphoria. And that's that designer nutrition that we're talking about, where we can check your SNPs and your DNA. And so you, at that point, once that testing is done, you then get a supplement that is for you and you alone, not for anyone else. Out of 400 million permutations, we can put together the exact formulation based on your exact epigenetic profile. That how does it get better than that? In really knowing
really state of the art.
Yeah, state of the art. So you need the right supplementation. Then you need the right detox. For all our Canadian friends that live up by Wade now, a brand new Pio Center. Read chapter 9 in this book. It's about precision intestinal oxidative hydrotoning. It's the best form of detoxification the world has ever seen. And it's explained in the book. One of these centers is now opening up in Surrey, in Vancouver, British Columbia. Previously, it used to be in our area down here in the Seattle area. Now it's in Sitka, Alaska, Denver, Colorado, and opening now in Vancouver. People travel from all over North America, soon all over the world, to spend a couple weeks with Dirk Yao, who does this. And if you want to start a fire in your body, if you want to detox at the cellular level, this is it. And cancer patients need it. Most of us need it. I've had 36 or 37 of these sessions today because I know their true value.
Wow, that's amazing. We'll put some show notes as well on this and where people can find these, because I think it's really critical. And then we've got the number 5, I guess.
Exercise. And I know that's been your mantra for years and years now. I mean, you don't win, 3 or 4 championships by not getting the right nutrition to start with, but without understanding the physiology of exercise and what it does for your body. We recommend whole body vibration too. And I have 2 of these machines. I mean, how much better does it get than to vibrate every cell in your body for 10 or 15 minutes by standing on one of these machines, helping your cells to breathe, helping them to get rid of waste, helping your muscles to get stronger, your bones to get stronger, because you're working on every cell in the body. If you're older, helping your balance to get better. They say that 10 minutes on a whole body vibration machine at just maybe 16.5 hertz is like an hour in the gym. An hour in the gym. I know some people would rather be in the gym like you, but a lot of people that won't get up on the couch except to change the channel on the TV or to get some chicken wings can now get on these whole body vibration machines. And still, probably better to stay mostly away from the chicken wings, but to get the body moving. There's just not a better exercise for that. And I know you know all about the weight training. People need to know about this. And we talk about the slow burn fitness revolution, lifting weights for people even in their 70s and 80s, but doing it through a slow burn fashion. And people, listen to this. If you didn't hear anything else I said today, it's Muscular exercise is probably the only exercise that takes sugar out of your blood without the use of insulin. And you pre-diabetics and type 2 diabetics out there need to know about this. It's so critically important.
Really well said and so concise. And I love the passion. And of course, that's why we get along so well. Is it's interesting. I did a number of webinars and public events and stuff like that. And I've gone to hundreds myself, as have you, from various experts. And, you know, it's interesting. It all really boils down to the same daily practices and lifestyle habits. And I have not found anyone who lives at what I say a high level of health and vitality that does not practice these principles that you outlined. And the beauty of it is it's getting better. There's more access to it. There's more information about it. It's becoming more commonplace. And really, Bob, you're one of these guys that have been advocating this for a long time, and you're kind of one of the spearheads of what I call the wellness revolution, what I call about the health optimization. We called our company Bioptimizers,
right?
Because it's biological optimization. Hey, you know, living's one thing, but how do I optimize this wonderful physical experience I have? How do I feel great moving into my 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond? And the people who are doing these things get to experience. The people that don't, chances are they're not going to. Before we wrap up, I'd like to I would like for you to please tell people, how do they reach you? How do they donate to you? And maybe, you know, where do they find out where you're going to be speaking next? Because I've been to some of your live events, and boy, oh boy, you do an amazing job about really breaking things down. And you're so congenial with your time and the energy and the people that come up to you and the lives that you've touched. You're an amazing guy, and I want to encourage people to find you, to go to where you're going to be, and to contribute to the American Anti-Cancer Institute and the International Wellness and Research Center. You're one of the good guys in the world. You're one of the integrous guys. You're on a fantastic mission. I've been so pleased to be associated with your great institution. Can you please let people know where they can find you and how to get more information, how to get your book and all that stuff?
Yes, indeed. And for those of you out there who don't know, Wade sits on our advisory board for the AACI and the IWARC, and we're just delighted to have him. We're delighted when we get people that think the same way we do and are involved in what we do. And it's just a treat for us to have someone like you, Wade. Thank you so much for that. Thanks, but get the book at just killingcancernotpeople.com. killingcancernotpeople.com. And then you can go to our website at americanACI.org, americanACI.org, and you can sign up for our newsletter there. It's free. It comes the first of the month electronically to you, and it's chock full of information every month. And it will also tell you where I'm going to be speaking. We have a little section that says, where in the world is Bob? And it tells you where I'm going to be for these time frames. And there's a lot of other great information on there. But, you know, get this book. Get this book. It's very easy to get, and it's inexpensive. Get a couple and get them out to a friend. We have people that buy lots of them, and they give them away for presents. And, you know, it's not about me, because the AACI gets the dollars from this book, but it's about helping people. And the more hands this book gets into, we see the more people it helps. We've had people pass these books around neighborhoods and all over the place, and many people have benefited. Of course, some people will just leave it on their table and won't look at it, but many will benefit from this. And a lot of hands will touch that book. So easy to get. And of course, the AACI benefits. And you can contribute right through our site to just look at becoming a part. Look at our menus on top of our website, americanaci.org, and it will lead you to where you can donate monthly. And if you're in the United States, it's tax deductible. I'm not sure about Canada, but so is the book. You know, $12 of every book is tax deductible as well. So we tried our best to make these available and to make it easy for people to navigate our site, to navigate the book, to get the book, and it's pretty straightforward.
Bob, you're doing great work in the world, and I really appreciate you taking time to spend with us. I also encourage all our listeners to get a copy of this book. It needs to be on your bookshelf. You need to read through it. Even if you know, quote unquote, you know some of this stuff. Mm-hmm. I've gone through your book a number of different times, and I'm looking forward to reading again, because oftentimes it's easy to get distracted in life. It's easy to forget the things that we know, and it serves as a great reminder, at least. But I believe that everybody's touched by things like cancer and disease and stuff. And when you have one of these on your shelves, you're going to be able to provide a resource to someone that you care, that you love, that might make some choices that could keep them around for a lot longer. And that's the most exciting piece of this. We'll put all the show notes in here on how to get the book. I'm Wade T. Lightheart with Bob Wright from the American Anti-Cancer Institute and the Awesome Health Podcast here at Bioptimizers. Thanks for joining us. Take action today. Contribute to the cause. It's a great institution. Bob's a great guy, and they're doing great work. We'll see you next time on the Awesome Health Podcast. Take care.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip. Turn cultured foods into superfoods. Raw fermented foods like sauerkraut and low sugar, live yogurt can be good for you, but rarely have enough of the right probiotic strains for therapeutic benefit. So here's a way that you can turn them into superfoods. What I do is I get some raw sauerkraut or a healthy yogurt. Ideally, it's grass-fed or coconut-based, and you can empty 3 caps of P3OM into a container and mix it up thoroughly. Leave it at room temperature for a couple of hours before putting it back into the fridge. And what's going to happen is these probiotic levels will be multiplied. In fact, it doubles every 20 minutes. And then what you're going to get is you're going to have a food with strong proteolytic activity. To learn more about P3OM and why its patented strains make it the strongest probiotic available, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.